For 20 years, our lives were intertwined, our future a shared dream. Then an airline confirmation landed in my inbox, revealing my husband's secret romantic getaway to Costa Rica with someone who wasn't me. 20 years. That's how long Mark and I had been together. 20 years of shared breakfasts, inside jokes that weren't funny to anyone else, and building a life brick by painstaking brick. We had the house with the slightly crooked fence we always meant to fix, the dog who was more our child than a pet, and a joint bank account that was a testament to our complete and total trust. It wasn't just for bills, it was our dream fund. The Someday in Tuscany fund, the Let's Finally Renovate the Kitchen fund. It was a symbol of us, a digital representation of our intertwined lives. I never, not once in 2 decades, felt the need to check it for anything other than to see how close we were to our next goal. That morning started like any other. The smell of dark roast coffee filled the air. Mark had already left for an early meeting at his firm, and I was scrolling through emails before starting my own workday from home. It was mostly junk mail, a newsletter from a plant nursery, and then an email from an airline. The subject line was simple: your flight confirmation to Costa Rica. I smiled. Our anniversary was in 2 months. Mark, my sweet, predictable Mark, was finally planning a surprise. He knew how much I'd been dreaming of white sand and jungle sounds, a real escape from our mundane routine. My heart did a little flutter. After 20 years, he could still surprise me. I clicked open the email, my mind already picturing myself with a cocktail in hand, the sun warming my skin, the flight details loaded, 2 round-trip first-class tickets. My smile widened. He was really splurging. Departure from our local airport in 3 weeks. Dates, a 10-day trip. My brow furrowed slightly. That was a bit sooner than our anniversary, but maybe he just got a good deal. I scrolled down to the passenger information, ready to see my name next to his, and that's when the world tilted on its axis. Passenger 1, Mark Hemlock. Passenger 2, Isabel Moreau. Isabel Moreau. The name meant nothing and everything all at once. It wasn't my name. I read it again, my brain refusing to process the letters. Isabella. It sounded exotic, sophisticated. It sounded like everything I wasn't. My hand started to shake, rattling the coffee mug against the wooden table. This had to be a mistake, a typo, maybe a colleague from his firm, a work trip he forgot to mention, but first class? To a romantic destination known for its honeymoon resorts? The denial was a flimsy shield, and the truth was a battering ram. With a feeling of ice water pouring through my veins, I opened a new tab and logged into our joint bank account, the US account. My fingers trembled so badly I had to type the password twice. The balance loaded, and my eyes immediately scanned the recent transactions. I scrolled past the mortgage payment, the gas bill, the grocery run from 2 days ago, and then I saw it. A charge from the airline, $11,452. The blood drained from my face. $11,000. That was a significant chunk of our Someday in Tuscany fund. It was the money we'd saved from my last bonus. My breath hitched. I kept scrolling, my dread growing with every line item. I was no longer looking for a mistake. I was hunting for the truth, and I found it, scattered over the last 6 months like a trail of breadcrumbs leading to my own personal hell. There were restaurant charges I didn't recognize, 2 at a time, from a ridiculously expensive French place downtown we'd only ever talked about going to, a charge from a high-end lingerie store, for items that were definitely not my size or style. There was even a charge from a jewelry store, a delicate gold necklace I had certainly never received. Each transaction was a tiny, sharp stab to the heart. He wasn't just cheating. He was wining and dining her, buying her gifts, funding an entire secret relationship with our money, with my money. I felt a guttural sob trying to escape, but I choked it down, replacing it with something cold and hard. The shock was crystallizing into a diamond-hard rage. He had used our shared dreams to finance his betrayal. He had looked me in the eye every single day talking about our future, while actively building another one with someone else. The sheer audacity of it, the disrespect, was breathtaking. I stared at the screen, at the dwindling balance of our account, and then I clicked back to the flight confirmation email. The bright blue hyperlink seemed to mock me. Manage my booking. My mind raced. He and Isabel were probably giddy with excitement, counting down the days until their romantic getaway, paid for by his loyal, trusting wife. They were going to drink cocktails on the beach and laugh about how they pulled it off. A wave of nausea washed over me, followed by a surge of pure adrenaline. Oh no, they weren't. He didn't just give me the evidence of his affair. He gave me the login details. He gave me the power. My cursor hovered over the link, my hand perfectly steady now. The $11,000 charge on our bank statement burned in my mind. He thought he was buying a vacation. He had no idea what he'd really just purchased. My click was decisive. The airline's website loaded, a cheerful banner advertising sunshine and escape. It asked for the booking reference and the lead passenger's last name. Both were right there in the email. Hemlock. I typed it in, my fingers striking the keys like tiny hammers. The page refreshed, and there it was, their entire itinerary laid out in sickening detail. Seat assignments, 2A and 2B. Meal preferences, vegetarian for Isabel, steak for Mark. A note about a champagne add-on for the flight. He was pulling out all the stops, using the money I'd earned from working 60-hour weeks on my last big project. The project I'd told him was for us. A small, bitter laugh escaped my lips. I navigated to the cancel flight option. A warning popped up. Are you sure you want to cancel this booking? Cancellation fees may apply. I clicked confirm without a moment's hesitation. Another page loaded explaining the refund policy. Because the flights were non-refundable, the $11,000 wouldn't be returned to our account. Instead, it was converted into a travel credit of the same value, valid for 1 year. And the best part? The credit was tied to the original booking reference. The booking, ID now controlled. A slow, venomous smile spread across my face. So Mark and Isabel weren't going to Costa Rica, but maybe, just maybe, I would be going somewhere fabulous next year, on his dime. The cancellation confirmation email arrived instantly. I forwarded it to my personal address and then deleted every trace of the original booking from our shared computer. Let him wonder. Let him panic when he tries to check in and finds his romantic getaway has evaporated into thin air. But that wasn't enough. Canceling the trip was just defense. I needed to play offense. I looked at the balance in our joint account again. It was still substantial, the cushion we'd built over years of careful saving. It was our cushion, and he had tried to rip a hole in it for another woman. I stood up, walked to our bedroom, and opened my side of the closet. It was filled with sensible clothes for my work-from-home life, comfortable pieces for weekends, a few nice dresses for the occasional dinner out. It was a wardrobe built for a life of comfortable partnership, not for a woman on the warpath. I grabbed my purse, a practical, sturdy leather tote I'd had for 5 years, and my keys. I walked out of the house we had built together, got in the car we owned together, and drove downtown, leaving my phone on the kitchen counter. I didn't want any interruptions. My first stop was the most exclusive department store in the city, the kind of place I usually only window shopped. The air inside smelled of expensive perfume and quiet money. I walked straight to the handbag section, a dizzying display of leather and logos. My eyes landed on a bag I'd seen in magazines, a stunning, structured piece in a deep emerald green. It was impractical, ridiculously expensive, and utterly beautiful. Mark would have had a fit. He would have called it a frivolous waste, a reckless indulgence. It was perfect. "May I help you?" a sales associate asked, her expression polite but appraising. "I'll take that one," I said, pointing. I didn't ask the price. I didn't need to. She carefully placed it on the glass counter. An excellent choice. I pulled out the debit card for our joint account. The little piece of plastic felt heavy in my hand, a loaded weapon. The sales associate swiped it. For a terrifying second, I thought it might be declined, that he'd somehow been alerted. But the transaction went through with a quiet beep. $4,800. Gone. For a purse. A wave of giddy, terrifying power washed over me. I wasn't just spending money. I was erasing him. With every dollar, I was reclaiming a piece of my contribution, a piece of my life. From there, it was a blur. I was a woman possessed. I went to the shoe department and bought 3 pairs of heels I had no occasion to wear, each one more beautiful and expensive than the last. I went to the jewelry counter and bought a pair of diamond earrings, not delicate and discreet, but big, sparkling statement studs that screamed, "Look at me." I bought a silk dress that felt like water against my skin and a cashmere coat that cost more than our first car. Each purchase was a protest. Each swipe of the card was a scream. I was no longer the sensible, careful wife. I was a force of nature, a hurricane of retail therapy tearing through the wreckage of my marriage. By late afternoon, I was laden with glossy shopping bags, the combined weight a strange comfort. I was sitting in a plush armchair in the shoe department, trying on a pair of knee-high leather boots when my new phone, a top-of-the-line model I'd bought on a whim at the electronics store next door, buzzed in my new emerald green handbag. I'd had it set up and my number transferred while I was having lunch. A single perfect oyster for every year of his betrayal, charged, of course, to our rapidly shrinking account. I pulled out the phone. The screen lit up with a picture of Mark, smiling on a beach in Greece from a vacation 5 years ago. His name glowed above it. He must have seen the bank alerts. The first ripple of the earthquake I had started was finally reaching him. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was it. The confrontation. The saleswoman knelt before me, holding one of the sleek black boots. "They look like they were made for you," she said. I looked down at the boot, then back at the vibrating phone in my hand. He could wait. The boots cost $2,000. They deserved my full attention. I pressed the decline button on his call and looked the saleswoman in the eye. "You're right," I said, my voice steady. "I'll take them." The drive home was surreal. I cruised down the familiar streets of our suburban neighborhood, but I felt like a stranger. The car, a sensible sedan Mark had picked out for its safety rating, was filled to the brim with designer bags. Their logos, Chanel, Gucci, Cartier, seemed to mock the cookie-cutter houses we passed. As I pulled into our driveway, my stomach twisted into a tight knot. Mark's car was there. He was home early. The hurricane had made landfall. I took a deep breath, clutching the buttery leather of my new handbag. This wasn't me. This woman dripping in luxury goods and cold fury. But maybe it was. Maybe she'd been there all along, buried under 20 years of compromise and quiet contentment. I got out of the car and began unloading my spoils, making 3 separate trips. I didn't try to hide them. I piled the glossy bags and boxes in the entryway, creating a mountain of my rage right there on the welcome mat. It was a monument to his betrayal. I found him in the living room, pacing like a caged animal. His face was pale, his tie loosened, and his phone was clenched in his hand. The moment he saw me, his eyes shot down to the shopping bags I was still holding. A flicker of disbelief crossed his face, followed by a wave of apoplectic anger. "What the hell is all this?" he demanded, his voice dangerously low. He gestured wildly towards the hallway. "I've been getting alerts all day. Thousands of dollars. Are you insane?" I dropped the last 2 bags onto the floor with a satisfying thud. I calmly took off my old sensible coat and draped it over a chair, revealing the new silk dress underneath. I walked over to the bar cart, my new heels clicking deliberately on the hardwood floor. I poured myself a generous glass of our best scotch, the one we were saving for a special occasion. I guess this qualified. "I'm not insane, Mark," I said, my voice eerily calm. I took a slow sip, the fiery liquid a welcome burn. "I'm just balancing the books." He stared at me, his mouth agape. "Balancing the books? You spent over $20,000 on purses and shoes. That's our savings. That's our future." "Our future?" I laughed, a sharp, ugly sound. "Tell me, Mark, was Isabel Moreau part of that future? Or was she just a short-term investment?" The color drained completely from his face. He looked like I had physically struck him. He opened his mouth, then closed it again, sputtering. For the first time in 20 years, I had rendered Mark Hemlock speechless. It was a small, satisfying victory. How did you—" he stammered. "You're a terrible liar, Mark, and you're even worse at covering your tracks." I took another sip of scotch. "First-class tickets to Costa Rica? For you and your mistress? Using our joint account? It's almost poetic in its stupidity. Did you really think I wouldn't find out?" He sank onto the sofa, the fight visibly draining out of him. He ran a hand through his hair, looking not at me but at the floor. "It wasn't supposed to be like this," he mumbled. It just happened." "It just happened?" I repeated, my voice dripping with venom. $11,000 for plane tickets doesn't just happen. Lingerie from La Perla and necklaces from Tiffany's don't just happen. A 6-month affair doesn't just happen, Mark. You chose this. Every single time you swiped our card for her, you made a choice." He finally looked up at me, and I was shocked to see tears welling in his eyes. But they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of self-pity. "I was going to tell you," he said, his voice cracking. "After the trip, I was confused. I love you, I do. But things with Isabel, it's different. It's exciting." "Exciting," I said, the word tasting like ash in my mouth. 20 years of loyalty, of building a life, of being his rock, and I was being traded in for exciting. The shopping spree suddenly didn't feel like enough. It was a drop in the ocean of what he owed me. "Well, I hope you and Isabel enjoyed the thought of your exciting trip," I said, swirling the amber liquid in my glass. "Because it's not happening." His head snapped up. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I canceled it. The flights, the hotel, the whole romantic fantasy you built with our money. It's gone." A frantic look crossed his face. "You canceled it? The money? That was non-refundable, Sarah. You just threw away $11,000. "Oh, no," I said, a slow smile returning to my lips. "I didn't throw it away. I converted it to a travel credit in my name." His jaw dropped. The realization of what I had done dawned on him. He had been outmaneuvered, beaten at his own game of deception. The silence in the room was thick and suffocating. He just stared at me, a stranger in his own home, wearing a new dress and an expression he had never seen before. I held his gaze, refusing to be the first to look away. The power had shifted. I was no longer the victim. I was the one holding all the cards. Finally, he broke the silence, his voice barely a whisper. "What do you want, Sarah?" he asked, his shoulders slumped in defeat. "A divorce?" I walked over to the mountain of shopping bags in the entryway and picked up the box from the jewelry store. I opened it and took out the diamond earrings, their facets catching the light. I walked to the hall mirror and began to put them on, my hands steady. "A divorce is a legal proceeding, Mark. It's paperwork and lawyers. It's civilized," I said, clipping the first earring into place. It felt cold against my skin. "What I want is compensation, and we are just getting started." I turned from the mirror to face him, a brilliant, cold fire in my eyes. "Now, go get the keys to your precious sports car. I'm feeling a sudden urge to learn how to drive a stick shift." Mark's prized possession was a vintage 1968 Mustang cherry red that he kept garaged under a silk cover. He'd spent a decade restoring it, and more money than I'd ever cared to calculate. He polished it every Sunday. He never let me drive it, claiming the clutch was temperamental and that I wouldn't understand the delicate dance of a manual transmission. When I told him to get the keys, he looked at me as if I'd asked for a kidney. "You're not serious," he breathed, his eyes wide with horror. "Sarah, you can't. You'll ruin the transmission." "That would be a shame," I said, my voice devoid of sympathy. I held out my hand, palm up. The keys, Mark. Or do I need to call a locksmith to get into the garage and a tow truck to get it out? I wonder how much more that would cost us. The use of the word us was a deliberate twist of the knife, and he flinched. Defeated, he walked to the key hook by the door and unhooked the single gleaming silver key. He placed it in my outstretched hand, his fingers barely brushing mine. The metal was cold. It felt like a scepter. I walked into the garage, flicking on the lights. There it sat, a gleaming monument to his midlife crisis. I pulled back the cover, the silk sliding off the perfect paint job. It was a beautiful car, I had to admit. A beautiful, expensive toy he'd bought with money that could have gone towards our Tuscany trip. I slid into the driver's seat. The leather was cool and smelled of wax and gasoline. It was the smell of his secret world, the one he retreated to when the reality of our 20-year marriage became too mundane for him. I put the key in the ignition and turned. The engine roared to life with a throaty, aggressive growl that vibrated through the entire car. I fumbled with the gear stick, the metal ball cool under my hand. I pushed in the impossibly stiff clutch, ground the gears with a sickening crunch, and lurched the car forward a few feet before stalling. Mark, who was watching from the doorway with the expression of a man watching his child walk into traffic, winced. "You have to ease off the clutch, Sarah," he shouted, his voice tight with panic. "I'm learning," I called back sweetly. I started the engine again. Grind, lurch, stall. The smell of burning clutch began to fill the garage. On the fourth try, I managed to get it into first gear and bumped it out of the garage, leaving a black tire mark on the pristine concrete floor. I navigated the suburban streets with a series of jerks and stalls, each gear change a screeching protest from the car's very soul. I could feel Mark's agony from a mile away. I drove to the fanciest hotel in the city, the one with the imposing valet stand out front. I screeched to a halt right in front of the main doors, stalling the car with a final shuddering jolt. A valet in a crisp red jacket hurried over. "Welcome, ma'am. May I take your car?" "Yes, you may," I said, handing him the key. "And I'd like to book your best suite for tonight." I paused, looking him directly in the eye. "The name's Moreau. Isabel Moreau." The look on Mark's face when I told him later that night over the phone was worth every penny of the $3,000 a night presidential suite. I described the marble bathroom, the panoramic city views, and the bottle of complimentary Dom Perignon I was currently enjoying. I didn't tell him I was really eating room service pizza in a fluffy white robe, watching bad movies. I wanted him to imagine Isabel in my place, to have the image of his affair tainted by the knowledge that I was living the life he had planned for her. The next morning I checked out, paid with the joint debit card, and left the Mustang with the valet. I took a cab to the highest-rated divorce lawyer in the city, a woman whose reputation was as sharp as her designer suits. Her name was Catherine, and she listened to my story with an unnerving stillness, her face giving nothing away. When I finished, detailing the secret charges, the canceled flights, the shopping spree, and the Mustang, she finally leaned back in her chair. "Impressive," she said, a faint smile playing on her lips. "Most women in your position are paralyzed by grief. You went straight to scorched earth. I like that." She laid out the facts. Under state law, everything acquired during the marriage was considered joint property. The house, the savings, his pension, even the precious Mustang. His affair gave me leverage, but the money I had spent would be factored into the settlement. "So I have to pay him back?" I asked, a knot of dread forming in my stomach. "Not necessarily," Catherine said, her eyes gleaming. "You didn't spend it on a secret lover. You spent it on yourself. You could argue it was therapeutic, a necessary expense to cope with severe emotional distress caused by his infidelity. It's a gray area, but it's an argument we can make. Right now, our priority is to freeze the assets." We spent the next hour drafting paperwork. We would file for divorce, citing infidelity. We would file an injunction to freeze our joint accounts and prevent him from selling any major assets like a certain cherry red Mustang. By the time I left her office, the initial thrill of my revenge was being replaced by the cold, hard reality of dismantling a life. I went back to the house to pack a bag. I knew I couldn't stay there. Mark's car was in the driveway. He was home. As I walked in, I saw that all my new purchases were gone from the entryway. For a wild second, I thought he'd returned them. Then I saw him coming out of our bedroom, his face grim. He was carrying my new emerald green handbag. "I'm taking these back, Sarah," he said, his voice firm, like he was trying to reclaim some semblance of control. "This is insane. We can't afford this." "You couldn't afford your affair, Mark, but that didn't stop you," I shot back. I walked past him into the bedroom. My closet was half empty. He had packed up all my new clothes, shoes, and jewelry into the shopping bags they came in. They were piled by the bed, ready to be returned to the stores. A cold rage, deeper and more potent than before, settled in my bones. He was trying to erase what I had done. He was trying to take back my power. "You can't do this," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "I have to," he said, avoiding my eyes. "I've been on the phone with the bank. We're in trouble because of what you did." He reached down to pick up a stack of shoe boxes, and that's when I saw it. Tucked into the side pocket of his briefcase, which was lying open on the bed, was a passport. It wasn't his. The photo on the open page was of a smiling, dark-haired woman, Isabel, and peeking out from behind it was a slim, official-looking document. I only saw the heading, but the words were unmistakable. Application for spousal visa. The air in the room went still and silent, the kind of silence that's so heavy it feels like a pressure against your eardrums. A spousal visa. The words echoed in the void where my 20-year marriage used to be. This wasn't just a fling. This wasn't just a midlife crisis fueled by stolen funds. This was a plan. He wasn't just planning a vacation with her. He was planning a whole new life. He was going to replace me. "What is that?" I asked, my voice a hollow whisper. I pointed a trembling finger at his briefcase. Mark's eyes followed my gaze. He saw the passport, the visa application. The last vestiges of his composure shattered. He slammed the briefcase shut, but it was too late. I had seen it. The final irrefutable proof of his premeditation. "It's nothing," he said quickly, his voice high and strained. "It's for a colleague at work. Her husband is transferring from the Paris office." The lie was so pathetic, so transparent it was almost insulting. Isabelle Moreau, the French name, the Paris office. He might as well have confessed. The rage I'd felt before was a flickering candle compared to the inferno that now consumed me. The shopping spree, the Mustang, the hotel suite, it all felt like child's play. He hadn't just cheated. He had plotted the complete erasure of my existence. "Get out," I said. The words were quiet, but they carried the weight of a death sentence. "What? Sarah, this is my house too." "No," I said, taking a step towards him. I felt a terrifying calm settle over me. "This was our house. But you forfeited your share when you decided to move your replacement in. You have 5 minutes to take what you can carry. Then I'm calling the police and telling them there's a trespasser on my property." I picked up my phone. "I already have a lawyer, Mark. Catherine sends her regards, and she advises me to tell you that any attempt to remove assets from this house, including those shopping bags, will be seen as a violation of the injunction we filed this morning." The word injunction hit him like a physical blow. He stared at me, truly seeing the stranger I had become. The pliable, understanding wife was gone, and in her place was a woman made of ice and steel. He looked at the bags of my purchases, then at me, and seemed to shrink. Without another word, he grabbed his briefcase, his wallet, and his car keys, for the sensible sedan, not the Mustang, and walked out of the bedroom. I listened to his footsteps retreat down the stairs, the front door open, and then close, with a final, definitive click. And then I was alone in the silence of the house we built. The weeks that followed were a blur of legal meetings and emotional exhaustion. Catherine was a shark. Armed with the canceled flight details, the bank statements, and my testimony about the visa application, she tore Mark's legal team to shreds. His attempts to paint me as a hysterical, vengeful spendthrift collapsed under the weight of his own calculated deception. He had funneled money from a business account into a private one, the one he used to pay for the initial visa application fees. He had lied on financial disclosure forms. Every rock Catherine overturned revealed another snake. The Mustang became a key point of contention. His lawyer argued it was a premarital asset, but Catherine produced receipts showing that the majority of the restoration work, tens of thousands of dollars, was paid for out of our joint account. It was marital property. Finally, Mark buckled. Faced with the threat of being investigated for financial fraud on top of the divorce, he agreed to a settlement. And I got everything I wanted. I got the house. All of it. He had to sign over the deed, his name wiped from the one place I'd poured my heart and soul into for 2 decades. I got the majority of our savings and investments, a figure that Catherine argued was reparative damages for his egregious breach of trust. I even got his pension. And the Mustang. The judge ordered it to be sold, with the proceeds split between us. The day before it was due to go to a collector, I walked into the garage with the key Mark had been forced to surrender. I looked at the car, his gleaming red trophy. It was a symbol of everything he valued over me. Vanity, excitement, a fantasy life. I didn't want his money from it. I wanted a reckoning. I called a local charity, one that ran a program teaching mechanics to at-risk youth. I told them I had a vintage car I wanted to donate. They could use it for parts, for training, whatever they needed. The look on the program director's face when I opened the garage door was something I'll never forget. Mark found out when the tax-deductible donation receipt was forwarded to his new address, a sad little one-bedroom apartment across town. I heard from a mutual acquaintance that he didn't speak for a week. Today, a year later, my life is unrecognizable. The house feels bigger, brighter. I painted over the bland beige walls we'd chosen together with bold, vibrant colors. My closet is a mix of my old, comfortable clothes and the beautiful, expensive things I bought on that first day of my new life. They're not trophies of revenge anymore. They're reminders of my strength. Reminders that I could stand up and fight for myself. Last month, I finally used that $11,000 airline credit. I didn't go to Costa Rica. Instead, I booked a solo trip, 2 weeks first class to Tuscany. I'm writing this from a sun-drenched villa overlooking a field of sunflowers. The kitchen I always wanted to renovate, the one here, is perfect. The other day, I was at a local market and I saw a beautiful handcrafted leather handbag. I thought about the emerald green one I'd bought in a fit of rage. I smiled, bought the new one with my own money, and walked away. Mark tried to buy a new life with our shared future. In the end, all he did was buy one for me, and it's absolutely beautiful.